Ekev, where the parasha begins, Vaya Ekev Tishmeon, where Ekev literally means on the heels of something. When you say in English on the heels of something, what you mean is short turnaround time. So on the heels of this, I found out this. Like right after this, all of a sudden this. So Vaya Ekev Tishmeon, here's what will happen in response to your observance of the mitzvot. Good things, and then bad things if you don't listen. So V'haya Ekev, the Midrash learns a little bit differently. That which the pasuk says in Tehillim, Lama ira bimera awon akeva yesubeni. Okay, when you're learning Midrashim, pay very close attention to the etymology, because akeva is the same ayin kuf bet that we learn from Ekev. So why should I fear when in bad days? The answer, awon akeva yesubeni. The sins of my heels surround me. So the Midrash goes on, praised be the name of the Holy One, blessed be He, who gave the Torah to Am Yisrael, and we have 613 mitzvot. Some of them are light, and some of them are grave, severe. And because some of these light mitzvot, there are many people who don't pay attention to them, who ignore them, and they throw them under their heels, meaning they trample them, like they walk on them. Which is to say that they're light in their eyes. Therefore, David was afraid of the judgment day, and he says, "Rabbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, I'm fearful from the. I'm not fearful of the grave mitzvot that are in the Torah. Why? Because they're grave. Because they're serious. I'm not I don't suspect that I'm going to violate something major, something very, very significant. What am I fearful of? From the light mitzvot, the small ones. Maybe I violated one of them. Maybe there's one that I did do or I didn't do, because I thought that it was insignificant, because I thought that it was unimportant. And you said, be careful. It's from Pirkei Avot. Be careful with the light mitzvot, just like with the grave ones. Which is and this is why the pasuk says, why should I fear in bad days? Because the sins of my heels will surround me, meaning that's what he means. The insignificant mitzvot that I ignored, or the insignificant avirot that I allowed myself to transgress, they're going to surround me when it comes time for judgment. And that's why Vaya Ekev Tishmeon, that's the relationship to the parasha. We'll discuss. And then we have the Midrash goes on and it tells you how precious the mitzvot are. Pasuk in Tehillim, we say this on Shabbat. These are the mitzvot that are more desired than gold, and paz is another word for gold. So there's another pasuk that says, "Gam avdecha nizhar b'hem shomra me'ekev rav." Okay, same chapter, so same book, same Tehillim, where he says, your servant, referring to himself, is very careful with your mitzvot, and I guard them ekev rav. I guard them very carefully, or with great care, with my heels or from my heels. Doesn't make sense so much as a pasuk. So the Midrash goes on and explains, come and see the difference between how David praises the Divrei Torah, where he says, come and see how David praises the words of the Torah, where he says that they are more desired than gold and much gold, basically. Not only this, but that there's nothing more pleasant, more desired than sifted white flour. No offense to the fans of whole wheat flour, because it literally floats in your mouth, like it's soft and spongy. Whole wheat doesn't make very good bread. In certain proportions you can make a nice bread with it, but it doesn't rise. It prevents the dough from rising. And Divrei Torah are even more precious than this, as we say, metukim midvash v'nofet tzufim. They are sweeter than honey, and from nofet tzufim, nectar, if you will. Rabbi Hanina says, if you say that there is, that there is no drink, no liquid sweeter than honey, Divrei Torah are even sweeter than honey, as it says, literally sweeter than honey and nectar. David says before the Holy One, blessed be He, Master of the universe, maybe because Divrei Torah are sweeter than honey, I allowed myself to eat them inappropriately, or to eat them before they were mature, to do something before it was proper or appropriate to do. Boser in Hebrew means immature, before its time. But rather, your servant, is also very careful to guard the mitzvot, and I guard them very much with my heels. What's he referring to? The lighter mitzvot, the ones that people typically ignore. This is why what's written, it's a pasuk in Tehillim as well. How great is the good that you have hidden for those who fear you, what you will do for those who put their trust in you. That's the reward of the light mitzvot, not the heavy ones, right? The light mitzvot. What on earth are we talking about? Translation is a little bit translation-like, but at the end of the day, we're talking about the mitzvot. And here David HaMelech tells you, I'm not afraid of the big mitzvot. Big mitzvot are easy. Because anything big is easy, right? And anything small is hard. Jess agrees. Okay, at least I know where you stand. Do me a favor. So, what does he mean, David HaMelech, when he says, I'm not concerned for the big mitzvot because they're big. I'm concerned for the little ones because they're little. Doesn't give you spiritual indigestion.
Well, I think it talks about the approach, right? You might have to underestimate a small mitzvah, so you don't take it seriously. It doesn't necessarily talk about the actual practice of it, that a mitzvah can be actually more difficult to do. But your willingness or readiness to do a hard mitzvah is you're probably more ready to do it because you understand the importance of it, and you tend to underestimate something that is more.
So you're saying that the importance of the difficult mitzvot is better understood. I would say maybe the difference between an easy mitzvah and a hard mitzvah is whether or not you understand it. Is keeping kosher necessarily easy? Maybe it'd be easier if we understood more about it, but we only know what we know. We do what we can. When we say light mitzvah, maybe the mitzvot that you understand are easier for you to do. And of course, you don't think about it twice because it comes reflexively to you.
Is it kind of light mitzvah, can you separate it like that?
Yeah. We say 613, we're referring to mitzvot midoraita.
Okay.
It's what's in the Torah. The question?
I was just going to say, it goes along with psychological principles of that. First of all, generally if you ask a person, you're a good person, most people will say yes. But then they'll say that, you might express a detail there. And when you say that something is a small thing or a big thing, it's really just because you yourself can't really understand what it is that we're transgressing on. And also,
Or whatever we transgress seems insignificant to us. Maybe that.
yeah.
It's basically what he's saying in the Midrash. So let me ask you a question. How many times in your life have you been tempted by murder? Other Shiur participants notwithstanding.
Every time I said
Right. I mean, seriously, you think of it this way. Murder is pretty bad, right? 10 Commandments, that kind of bad. This like primordial, you don't have to be Jewish to know this is wrong kind of bad. How often have you been tempted to actually plot out someone's assassination? To find a way to actually, it's pretty bad murder. It doesn't cross your mind on a daily basis. And if it does, we should talk. Adultery. Maybe the temptation is a little bit different. I don't know how tempted you are to murder someone, but people are definitely tempted to make silly mistakes of the sexual kind. But adultery is a really big deal. Again, 10 Commandments. I'm not making this up.
Even the 10 Commandments you have to put on the hand.
Right. Which is different. And Chazal called it mitzvah kasha shebakashot. The hardest of the hard mitzvot. Kibud avayim. Your parents might be crazy. No, I know your parents. They're great. You say, my parents, ups and downs, joys and challenges.
Parents are parents.
Parents are parents. In fact, it seems almost intentional. It seems almost intentional that Hashem gave you these particular parents, as to say, you're tempted to believe you could have got along with other pair of parents. The only thing that any human being could do to annoy me would be like my mother, the way she nags me, or my father, the way he tries to correct me. But everybody's parents are a challenge for them. That's what parents are for. They're here to challenge us. Think of kids being challenging, their parents are challenging. So, adultery, even if it's tempting, a lot of things need to line up for something that crazy to happen, right? Because if she has a husband, probably he's not really excited about her doing something disloyal to him. And if you're married, this is going to be even more complicated for you to pull off. I mean, it's just not one of those things that's easy to transgress, even if you wanted to. Let's say you wanted to kill someone. Aside from your natural disinhibition, your natural inhibition, your natural disinclination to be violent, to strangle someone or stab them or shoot them, whatever. To be able to pull it off, to actually kill someone is not that easy. I mean, people die by accident all the time, but try doing it on purpose. Murphy's Law, it's not going to work. You're going to have to fight, you're going to have to struggle, you have to come up with a plan, you have to do it in such a way that you don't get caught, unless you're a terrorist, I don't know. Adultery. You would literally have to sit there and plan and think and plot and have, solutions to problems that might come up, because people do these things usually in hiding. Avodah Zarah. I don't know about you, I've seen all kinds of statues. I saw that 8-armed Indian elephant thing. I'd be lying if I told you I was tempted to throw it a peanut or like burn incense to it. I don't. Not exactly. It just doesn't cross your mind when you think about things to do something like that. Then again, subtle averot, things that are a little bit more difficult to pinpoint or that are more difficult to prosecute. Right, lashon hara. There you go. We prosecute lashon hara. I wasn't saying it that way. I didn't mean it that way. Really, I was saying it in a productive way. I didn't mean to say that he's a jerk. I meant to say that he's stubborn in a special holy way that contributes to his mitzvot. Like, do I mean to say that she's stingy? She's not stingy. She's thrifty. I can learn from her. It's difficult for us to avoid these little avirot, probably because we don't perceive them to be very grave. They're just not very serious in nature. Who doesn't jaywalk in New York City? They're technically against the law? Technically against the law. The police don't care. They don't even enforce it. Shooting someone, they're likely to find you. There's processes and procedures for saying, right. They will generally catch up with you if you do something really crazy. So most of us don't do anything really crazier than like a parking ticket, maybe a speeding ticket. That's usually the extent of it. David HaMelech is telling you, I'm not afraid on Judgment Day that I will have murdered someone by the time I'm done, because I'm pretty good at not killing people. Like a streak going, since my last run-in. I've been clean for a few years. My concern is all the little avirot that add up. The things that literally I step on with my ankles. Like I step on with my heels. So the parasha begins, Va'aqiv tishma'un. Literally it reads, in response to, as a result, resulting from your observance of the mitzvot and the covenant, here are all the good things that are going to happen. And the Midrash is telling you, but don't be so proud of yourself when it comes to the Big Ten, let's say. What we're talking about here is something much more subtle, something much more, much finer, to put a point on it. The things that most people ignore and most people don't care about are the things that most of us get punished for. Because again, doing something really crazy and bombastic is not likely to happen to most of us. Happens to be that there's an opinion in the Gemara that explains, maybe 10 or 11 different explanations as to why the 15th day of Av is one of the happiest days in the Jewish calendar. You ever seen this? It's a lovely Gemara. It talks about all sorts of things, maybe because the people who were murdered in Biter, we were able to bury them 6 days later, and they didn't decompose, which was a blessing because there were probably a few 100,000 or a few million. That the tribes were allowed to marry each other, etc. One opinion holds, what's so great about the 15th day of Av is that the nights get shorter. Like the nights get longer, the days get shorter. So what's so great about that? What's great about that is that you can't work outside even if you want to, because it's dark. The days before cell phones and street lights, you couldn't work. So what happens? So you go to bed when the sun sets because it costs money to burn oil or kerosene or whatever, petroleum. And because you went to bed earlier and earlier every night, because the sunset is getting earlier and the sunrise is getting later, you would wake up, light a small candle at home, and in the days before cell phones and YouTube and Facebook, people used to learn Torah. And so the Gemara says, what's so exciting about the 15th day of Av? This is like the turning point of the year. Forget Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, like it starts now. What's the big deal about it starting now? Is that you go to bed earlier, you wake up earlier, you have time to learn Torah before you go to work. That's the happiest day on the Hebrew calendar. 2 happiest days on the Hebrew calendar, the 15th day of Av and Yom Kippurim. So Adam says, no matter how early I go to bed, I wake up late anyway, but it's fun nonetheless. It's a happy time of year for me, albeit for different reasons. So, yes, it's true that a little bit of sleep goes a long way, and we probably don't get enough of it. But the idea that we can spend the next maybe 8 or 9 months really milking this concept, going to bed earlier, waking up earlier, and learning Torah, to Chazal was a really big deal. It's one of these little mini mitzvot. Is it technically mitzvah in the Torah to go to bed early, to wake up early? Not literally. Are there a lot more mitzvot, a lot less avirot that you can perform by living your life in that kind of a schedule? Probably. You wake up before tefillah, you don't have to run an hour and a half late. Maybe your tefillah, you get to build up some momentum, you get to build up some focus, you get to kind of iron out some of the kinks, and maybe your tefillah is on a higher level. And if you can learn Torah before you go to work, maybe you're going to be a little bit more careful about the way you speak, about the way you conduct yourself, the way that you negotiate, the way that you pay, the way that you deal with your employers, with your employees, etc. So, the idea that David HaMelech is telling you is that life is very rarely defined by great, big, bombastic concepts, because most of us are pretty good at that. The difference between someone who is a little bit more accomplished in life and someone who's not is very rarely in some really unique skill or talent they possess. It's in those things like habits, work ethic, the little small details, the ability to turn off your cell phone, the ability to focus on something, the ability to get something done. Sometimes it's these little tiny things that add up to big things, right? If you point at someone who's gotten, who's accomplished a lot, who's achieved a lot in life, chances are that they're not radically different from you. And that, although it's tempting to say they are, because it basically exempts you from having achieved or accomplished that much, well, I couldn't do it because I wasn't born with Bill Gates' skills. Oh, he wasn't the best student in the world. The guy's got some talent. Maybe he's got some perseverance to him, but again, wasn't necessarily the world's best student. The differences are likely a lot finer than that. And the same is true of athletes and athletics. Very often, it's not the people who have the most physical, just blessed with the most physical skill or talent. It's people who work very hard, people who train hard, people who practice a lot. So the idea that David HaMelech is telling you is basically the secret that Midrash is revealing about this week's parasha, is that your observance of the Torah and the mitzvot and your adherence to the Brit is not tested in the big things, tested in the little things. I'll conclude with this, but it's a very telling example. Husband and wife generally don't come to tell me, you know what, I caught my husband cheating. That's pretty rare in general, I have to be honest, but such things have happened. Normally, a wife doesn't come and tell me, my husband beats me up and curses at me and throws things at me. Usually they come after they had a fight, they've had an argument, etc. But very often it starts in the little things. Your ability to control the little things, to control your reactions to little things, to incorporate good habits and avoid bad ones, really sets the tone, kind of sets the pace for a relationship. Most relationships don't fail because of some overarching, inevitable incompatibility. People typically don't get married if they realize there's a huge non-starter in the relationship. Then why do some relationships fail and go nowhere, or just frustrate the two parties involved? It's the little things. It's not I couldn't have loved her, or she could never develop a taste or respect or appreciation for him. You could have. Probably the little things started to chafe, and at some point you step back and you say, I don't want to be here, I don't know how I got into this, and I want out. When the reality is, the big issues probably weren't so big were it not for a bunch of the smaller issues actually flaring up and making things look a little bit different. So our judgment, if you will, is much more heavily focused on things that most people ignore and don't pay attention to, and those little things add up to big things, which ultimately make the difference between those of us who observe the mitzvot and those who don't, those who achieve and succeed and those who don't. Same is true of relationships, etc. Beautiful little idea from this week's parasha. So, let you guys go. I know it's a little bit late. Be'ezrat Hashem, I'll see you on Shabbat.